basically, cosmology is like the science of how the universe came to be. So, like, astrophysics is the bigger thing, and then cosmology is a part of it where you're studying just the origins of the universe and time and space and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Um, thing about that is, so Alan Guth had this theory, and in fact, there's a very cool website where you can go to called World Science U, and they have these mini courses by these experts, and Alan Guth had one of them.
Drop chat.
Yeah, I should put. Yeah. Um, really cool. A course on inflationary cosmology is what something I've done, and fell in love with like his work because basically he um, he'd seen certain observations about like no, in fact, yeah, they'd seen certain observations about the universe, and they couldn't be explained with normal like Big Bang. Like just Big Bang itself doesn't solve the problem as to why is there so much energy imbalance in places? Why are there stars forming at all? Because ideally things should be so uniform. Like when you start with something, there's no reason for there to be lumps of energies which eventually coagulate into like gravity and stars and things like that. So the entire argument was that there has to be something more that we're missing. And what he proposed is there were quantum fluctuations. So basically, there's this in the quantum under quantum mechanics when you're talking about really small spaces and energies, you're talking about regions which always like there's no uniformity. There's always some kind of like fluctuations here and there. And he claimed that those fluctuations, when they expanded really quickly, is what created the imbalance that created like this the ability for the universe to make stars and other things. So it could only happen when you have some kind of imbalance somewhere. And this entire theory with paper, like with pen and paper, through math, he was trying to figure out, okay, if quantum fluctuations expand in this at this rate, what would be the orientation of light? Like which angle will the photon of light hit us today if that had happened 13.8 billion years ago? And I think years later, someone released the Hubble Space Telescope. And when they actually captured the radiations coming in, the angle of light was to the decimal precise of what he'd calculated on pen and paper. Like, which is
That's
that to
pretty
me is the
amazing.
magic of math and physics. Like
Yeah.
the fact that you can just think of something, um, put it on pen and paper, and try to predict something as specific as the angle of light that'll hit us. And the angle can be like all over, right? Like the polarization of light is such a specific thing that he calculated. It's crazy. Like, yeah. So, wait, I forgot the point, but the
But
point
but
was,
but this explains also why people love religion because it's just so much easier.
yeah,
That's true. That's a good point.
yeah, yeah, and I'm just wondering if that theory has creases in it now because of this new observation.
Mm.
I'm sure, like the inflationary cosmology did happen, but I'm just wondering how does that theory change now? Like, because these new observations do change our idea as to when stars formed, and therefore you have to create the model of the universe we use has to have some kind of space for it to form earlier than we thought, and like a
It,
lot of billions of years earlier, right?
I mean, that's one point. The other point is also that, we've declared things as stars or planets, right? Planets, sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
that are not necessarily planets, like, the gas giants, right? It's
Mhm.
it's now being discussed, and their titles as planets are being retrieved because they cannot really be called planets, right? So what we
Mhm.
see, right, at first instance, and what we make out to be maybe a planet, and up on closer looks and closer investigation, we start seeing that's actually not true. So I think there have been also a lot of like these kind of like misassumptions, so they
Yeah,
need to
yeah, yeah.
be corrected as well at the same time because a planet needs to have land mass, I guess, and
Right.
gas doesn't count as land mass. So yeah.
Hmm. I mean, but there I feel like it comes down to nomenclature, right? Like, because for example, Pluto not being a planet is um, it's more to do with how we want to categorize things rather than how it is. Like stars, it's very clear. Like stars release light of their own.
No, but
But
I think it makes us miss out on like really important things. Like I didn't know that, you know,
Oh,
Pluto's already huge, right? But I
yeah,
didn't know that like the magnet field of Pluto is 24 times its original size. That's
right.
humongous. And who knows what kind of impact these magnet fields have? Like they just
Mhm.
realized Pluto can actually eat like planets to be, right?
Right, right, right.
And this like black hole within the planet. So is that a black hole? Black hole, you
Yeah,
know?
I know
It's
it. No.
it's like it sends you down like this road of no
Right, that is
return,
right.
honestly. Like I try to not get completely obsessed over these things on the weekends. But yeah, like
Yeah.
if you have any recommendations to also understand the math better, please drop in the chat. I like
In fact, this will be less math, but it's a lot of it takes you through the theory really well.
nice.
I'll just
Okay.
send you the link.
Oh, you're
Alan's
putting
book.
this here in the side chat, aren't you? Ah, no. You're
Yeah,
putting
I'm
this
trying
in
to
the main
find it.
chat?
Yeah, I'll do it in the main chat.
Yes, please. Thank you. Ah,
In
so
fact, all of these books are beautiful, so I'll just send the total link.
I don't want to be a bother, right? But how have you guys been doing with the reading?
Um, I read a few things, but I actually went down on my own rabbit holes more than um, reading about. Like, I read only 4 articles and then just went much deeper in my own.
Oh, that's
Um,
good. Okay,
yeah.
that's really nice.
Mhm.
I didn't read anything. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll teach you stuff I learned.
Okay, sounds like a nice idea.
Oh, shut up,
But
Joe.
I did actually. Oh, guys, I wanted to so badly share this with you. For the Elena AI that I told you about, I
Mhm.
read this really good article because I remember we were discussing about this the other day. I really wonder if I can find this now. Well, it was such a good article. Yeah, this one. Oh, I found it. I cannot believe I found it. I think I also shared it before in the main chat, so I'm just gonna drop it here in the side chat. But it's a long read article, so it's like 50 minutes or something to listen to, right? So just
Mm.
listen to it, don't read it. Listen to it. It's like a podcast.
Jonathan Haidt. He's my favorite author. Like one of my favorite authors.
It's just like it's so good because we had this whole discussion on like gun control versus no gun control, right? The other I think 2 sessions ago, and he is like he's moving everything in such a good like concise context. So I can only highly recommend this one. It was really good. So I did reading, I just didn't do specific reading.
Strata, you will actually really love his work. Jonathan
Oh,
Haidt.
yeah.
You should
Which
look into his work. He's like
is that the link that
behavioral.
Oh,
Stella
good
provided,
morning,
right?
Strata.
Good
Yeah.
morning. Good morning. It's a Jonathan Haidt? That
H-A-I-D-T. Yeah,
yeah,
H-A-I-D-T.
see it. Okay. Which is the book that's really
The Righteous
uh,
Mind.
The
by him.
Righteous Mind? I just
Yeah.
love the title. Holy smokes. Everybody has a righteous mind, don't they?
It's it's he studies moral philosophy. Moral psychology or something like that. Basically, how our morals determine how we vote and bunch of things. Like his work is very fascinating, and also like he extremely like his entire work is focused on how can I get both sides of like most countries to talk to each other. Like how can we actually derive wisdom from everybody, no matter whether they're conservative, liberals. Like there is like nuggets of wisdom in every philosophy, and how can we like get speak to each other? I think that's what he focuses on.
Wow, thank you for that synopsis because it sounds like somebody who I would definitely like to read more of. And the book you just said was The Righteous Mind.
Yeah, the
That's
righteous mind. Yeah.
I might try and see if I can read that this week, and
You should
maybe
watch his TED Talks. Just they cover a lot of his ideas, and
do they?
then if you like his work, then go ahead and I would say like read everything because even the recent like he's in fact championing certain colleges in Texas now,
Mhm.
called I'm forgetting the name, but there are like a couple of these heterodox academy. I think they are starting a bunch of universities in Texas to
Wow.
teach beyond what normal universities teach. Pretty
Wow.
cool. Like
Yeah,
open debates, open discussions about politics, like without any criticism. Like freedom of speech is what they are championing as well.
this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I'm actually looking it up right now.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So okay, Stella didn't read.
No need
What
to
about
repeat.
Grayscale? What about Grayscale? Did you get to read something today? Like this week?
Yes, I did. Because I pretty much went through it all
Oh,
before, but I just went and kind of reviewed a few things. So, I think the main thing that kind of grabbed me, and I guess in this reading, because I think we were going in order, was that computer, was the map actually, because I'm into, as frameworks and things like that, and there's tons of this. So the way he mapped out, um, you know, to observe, to ask, to map, to model, like that, whole thing. So that's kind of what interests me to just bring things together in a way that everyone's on the same page, and if you go through the same process, you wouldn't necessarily have conflicting. Well, you're going to have conflicting views and opinions, but as long as everyone knows the terminology and kind of the process of how we're going about it is it's really important to me as someone who is into protocols and things like that. But it also, kind of stemmed a few things, because I remember last week we were talking more about the I guess how can I put this? I was reading something about like autonomous type organizations, and I was looking at an old book we should read about mergers and acquisitions, and the thing is, to be acquired or to merge into, it's a big issue, and the reason why people, like, one of the strategies is that your business is just not doing well, so someone comes and kind of gobbles you up, type of thing. But for the most part, if you don't have things in place, meaning that if you're not driving your business, this is what one of the founders of Forbes used to say: if you don't drive your business will drive you out of business. So, if you don't have someone driving the business, but you also, the way we're talking about it now, want to have the business run itself. So there's maybe things you have to put in place to have it run itself. When the old school, you had to have this kind of headmaster to try to make sure everything was, being run on time, making sure that people were coming to work on time, and but we're trying to develop a system which runs itself. So that kind of quote kind of spoke to me this week as I was going through some of this reading.
Oh, and that's a cool quote.
I actually also have something else to share.
Mm-hmm.
I have something else that I've started reading while I wasn't reading what I was supposed to read is Virtual Society. I don't know if you guys have heard about this book, but it's quite nicely written. Also putting it in the side chat. It's not super, I feel it's like, of course it's interesting to read, but it's not yet. It's more about the metaverse and the concept idea of the metaverse than it is about like governance topics, right? But still, it's some good thought in there.
I can talk about what I read, um,
Yes,
which
tell us.
was, yeah. So like basically, I was reading about um, I want to like formally jump into complexity science and basically like I've dabbled with it here and there. I've dabbled with how to code these things, but I feel like I need to understand deeper the math behind things because I feel like there are a lot of times I'm getting stuck at really understanding what to get out of the models that I'm building. And understanding how these have been used in different domains will probably help me understand. So I was just going through the history of it and very fascinating. Basically, for most of history, we've built models of of the world, like for example, uh, like for example, the model of gravity that we have, and that's a linear model in the sense that we are using linear dynamics. Uh, the logic being that basically, if it's a Earth and a Moon system, you can basically perfectly predict what's going to happen if you know their initial conditions really well. But in like Principia Mathematica, like the book that Newton wrote, it's very fascinating when you actually go through the sections. There's one section where he starts trying to solve the three body problem, which is the problem between Earth, Moon. Like, how can a Earth, Moon, Sun system be stabilized? Like, there's Sun and there's Earth and a moon's revolving around the Earth, and Earth's revolving around the Sun, but they're all kind of revolving around each other's center of masses because everything has gravity. So he actually couldn't solve it. Like he tried solving it in certain conditions he could, in certain conditions there are other people who found like Lagrange points and things like that. There's certain important things that people figured out, but he couldn't solve it. Euler couldn't solve it. Copernicus, like Galileo, almost sorry, Copernicus is way older, but almost everybody you've heard of in this domain tried to solve this problem, couldn't solve it. Um, they solve certain like restricted versions of it, but they actually can't solve the problem itself. Until I'm forgetting who it was now again, but I forget his name. But there's this person who comes and writes a paper on saying, "Oh, I understand why it's not solvable," and he proved that there's certain problems in math that are not solvable by the tools we have today. The problem is, he'd drawn these graphs to prove it, but his drawings were so bad that instead of drawing them, he just started describing them with words in his paper, and no one understood what was trying to say. So no one took that paper seriously in 1880s or something. And up till 1980s or 1960s or something, nobody even looked back at that research. Right when we start studying about antennas or like lasers, because we start like this whole Cold War, space race, all of these things are happening. um, we start needing better antennas and lasers. And that's when everyone starts looking into nonlinear dynamics, which is a whole new field of math, which people started like discovering in many domains, in antennas and lasers and turbulent waters. Like if you're trying to study how planes are going to fly, you need to understand turbulence. All of these things like people started studying and they realized, oh, we are hitting the same roadblock. We can't compute beyond a point. Then they look back at other mathematicians who tried solving these problems, figure out this dude proved that it's unsolvable using the math we have today. And that's how chaos theory started. That's how we started like studying what chaos is, which is a bunch of nonlinear dynamics with one or two variables. And the second we start adding more variables, like there are more interdependencies, there are more things you have to start considering, that's when we are moving towards complex systems. So complex systems are actually the same transition from linear systems to nonlinear systems, and those are called chaotic systems when there are like one or two variables that you're dealing with. And the second you go beyond, like variables start becoming like almost um, 50, 100,000 or like above like tens, you're starting moving towards complex systems. And that's when like a whole other aspect of math starts coming in, like numerical computation, computational simulations. These are the things that you start needing to use to understand these things. There are no analytical solutions. So my theory is, I mean, not my theory, but at least from what I've read and what I'm seeing happen, even in science, is that there's a slow shift towards building simulations, even in physics. Where even in physics, where like we used to hold up like, analytical solutions, one formula is, if you find the formula for everything, that's when you solved everything. We're moving from that to an understanding of the world where actually one formula, analytical formula, might not be the solution for everything. And we might need to understand rules and interdependencies and like how these systems evolve with each other. Like, and that's when you start needing um, complex systems modeling. You start needing to run simulations. You can't do it through like standard like
Like
math
that.
equations of just
Wow.
You see?
Sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna jump in. Somebody
Right.
else want to?
Also, Strata, I'm struggling to hear you. I have to
Oh.
increase the volume.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear now.
Yeah, I was leaning back and I was looking out my window, so I kind of okay. So Rohan, I really what you said kind of struck a chord with me for this week because this week I've been a bad boy and I did not do my reading. Although I've done all the reading, most of us have just gone through and passed it, but although I did buy and read a book on Monday, and I would say I'm about, actually, I'm almost done the book, and it's called The Everything Store by Brad
Yeah.
Stone. And I don't know how many fangirls or fanboys we have out there about Jeff Bezos, whatever. But it's not whether you're a fan or not, but really what I found very, based off of what you were saying, Ron, about the complex theories, the models and whatnot, it just reminded, you said something about chaos theory. That's what caught my attention. And I'm going to go a little deep here in terms of what I analyzed and what I read. And what was very fascinating was the fact that Jeff and Amazon's story is one from rags to riches. It's from the underdog to the top dog. And when I went through it, Brad Stone's sort of narrative and explanation of Amazon's journey is pretty remarkable because it's not the fact that they were highly, let me put it this way. He saw an opportunity. He saw an opportunity in an emerging field such as the internet, as we are seeing with token-based economies. And the thing that I found very fascinating, I thought Jeff and Amazon was this organization that tries to have a P&L for every expense. There's some form of revenue stream, right? And for every dollar, they justify it to the nines. But what I realized was that this was one of the most frugalist companies out there. This company was at the it was like a poster child for capitalism and frugality. And what I was finding very fascinating is that what catapulted Amazon forward was not just this vision from Jeff, they call him this, quirky intellect, whatever. It was his ability to inspire people towards a cause, but more importantly, he was very clear on his vision. And along the way, what they ended up doing was creating a lot of chaos. They created a lot of chaos in the company. But the thing that I reflected on yesterday was that the chaos was targeted chaos. Do you feel me? And so when you're talking about chaos theory, I think it's something that I'm probably gonna dive in deeper. Maybe you can help kind of guide me on some readings or a book that I can read in the week. But what I found very fascinating was that this guy, he even took away people's parking passes, right? He took away all subsidies and he said everything is the everything store. Everything you do, every dollar we spend needs to go to this company. And I look at the company now and we're in astonishment. And so I was trying to think about what does this mean to us? What does this mean to token-based economies? And in a world where it's so easy to create a coin or create a whatever a meme coin or whatever and launch it to generate revenues, it lowers the barriers to it lowers the barriers of or sorry it increases it minimizes the barriers to capital and increases that flow. And anyways, what I wanted to get at was the fact that what struck a chord with me is the fact that we have a lot of chaos right now in many different economies, right? Whether it be the, our existing, fiat-based economy or even token-based economies, from currency-based tokens to governance tokens to whatever other tokens there are out there. But the thing that I think is very inspiring for me was the fact that at the end of the day, no matter how much we think and believe of a higher mission of this sort of equality and sustainability and just general, like I call it like a form of utopia, but it's like it's a desire for us to better humanity and do better with our financial system. What I was reminded very quickly is the fact that if we do not bring along the old money, right, into this new way by giving them the security that they need, it's just going to be that much more of a longer road. But also the economies that are being built right now within Ethereum will be the everything store. That's my philosophy. But sorry, my thought. It's just a bit of a tangent. It was just something I had read, and I just found it to be very, very fascinating on how they had what's called. I just coined it as focused chaos because they still were marching to the direction of the ultimate goal of what Jeff had put forward. But anyways.
No, I mean, I think that's a very good term for even, let's say, the way Bitcoin changed incentive structures, like in the sense, or like it introduced a completely new form of social technology, which it's like focus chaos in the sense of you're letting people do whatever they want, but the best thing they can do is the thing that benefits the system. Like the most selfish thing they can do is the thing that actually benefits the system.
Exactly.
You're like mining, yeah. Yeah,
So,
so
yeah, actually, I've learned about Amazon in two contexts, right? One is the Web3 sustainability loop, which all of us read in the beginning of, all of this, which brought like clarity as to, his vision was very clear from the beginning, right? And also how he looped in customer feedback to keep iterating, right? To keep making the customer experience better and better and better and better, right? The other thing is also that within Amazon, they applied something that is also very typical for big tech companies in general, and it emerged in the beginning of the 2000s, is rapid prototyping, which is inspired by design thinking, right? So it's not about like finding the perfect solution, it's about throwing out like 20 different solutions and seeing which one comes back with the best results, even though they are not perfect, right? So that's something we can look at when, also we're designing systems, right? Is like, hey, let's not just take like 500 years to complete one idea, rather create a good sandbox and test out all the 25 ideas we have, right? And then see which of the bits and pieces we can take from the verification process that survived, let's just say, combine them and make a better system and at like on a larger scale, right? That's something we can look at, I feel. But then there's also the downside, looking at systems like, for example, the one by Amazon, right? So I think there's like the positive stuff you can draw from, but then there's also the negative stuff.
There's a lot of negatives. There's a lot of negatives too.
Yeah, but like even without going into details, right? So a company like Amazon is like entirely focused on capitalism, right? Capitalism per se, none of us would want to live without it. So, just thinking, right? Like we're too used to it now. And it's also nice that we can buy stuff that we like. So probably people will not easily revert back from that. So that's kind of like, I think, stupid to assume to a certain degree. But at the same time, capitalism without conscience, right, has also brought like a lot of downsides to all of this. Have like introduced a lot of pain points to society and people in the society. So I think by looking at models like Amazon, we do ourselves a favor if we are ready to look at both, right? The downsides and the upsides. And then we draw from both of them and we learn to make it better. So for example, in Web3, for me, it means to build webs, for example, right? So I think I said this before. I don't think an ecosystem is done by creating one project and just like a bunch of products under that project, right? So that's also something Amazon has done. Amazon has started to buy off companies, right? That's the capitalist approach, right? Let's just buy all the competition and make it ours. It's smart, right? There's nothing dumb about it. It's a smart thing to do. Yeah.
Did you say Microsoft? Yeah.
No, I didn't say Microsoft. I just
Oh,
said like they bought off like a lot of small companies, right? To
Oh,
make it
yeah.
their own and have like their own manufacturing for certain products and so on and so forth. But in our case, it means not just buying off Web3 companies, right? In my opinion, it means linking up and linking together with companies and projects that align with our value set, right? And make them part of the system. And I had yesterday a meeting with someone who is as excited as me about the multidimensional passport. And so we are working on it now, and I think it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be a part in that direction, right? Because I don't think we need to repeat certain things. We need to iterate on them. And I think that's something that's been, sorry, now I'm talking a lot, but that's something that's been stopping us for a long time, I feel, because we've been trying to copy. We've been trying so much to just copy what already exists instead of thinking in completely new terms, because now we can, right? It's like, who's gonna stop me from doing this stupid passport, right? No one. I'm just thinking differently. And so, yeah, I think it's good to look at stuff that has worked in the past, but also it's good to iterate on it. Sorry, that was like way too long, but here you go.
I don't think that, like, I in no shape or form think that we need to repeat the past, but we do need to reform ourselves. We need to reform ourselves forward, because when sustainability, we read that a long time ago, and that's what his secret sauce was. That was their competitive advantage, right? That loop that they never shared until afterwards. But I agree. I think that there's this balance that's not being struck right now. There's a balance that's missing, and the balance is between replicating the old world and being bold enough to change the new world. And that is something that we're seeing it right now. But
I think, sorry to interrupt you. I think I feel you. It's like, you always feel like you cannot read enough to wrap your head around, like, what is the new, right? Are you already in the new, or is the new still going to happen? And no matter how much you read and how much you expect it to happen and just be like, like there suddenly, right? It's just not going to happen. And I feel you. I just want to say I feel you.
How do we do it then, Stella? Like what would so okay, so I want to go back to something you said earlier about Amazon, like what I agree with. Well, it's not that whether I agree or disagree, but I'm aligned with you, because it was that that rapid prototyping, right? That's what I was talking about, chaos theory, targeted chaos theory. Because when Rohan brought it up, I was like, and I was reading the book, I'm like, there was just so much chaos, and that's why some people stayed there through all the pain that he put them through, and some people left when their stocks got vested. But it was that chaos and how they were still able to fail forward, or have that target. And so my my question is that, and going to that point you just made, because that's where what I'm seeing in various different economies and stuff, just from my viewpoint, is how much is enough, okay, to prepare ourselves for this, for an evolution in this space, but then how do, like, if never is enough, I don't know if this is too philosophical for even me at early morning, but if never is enough, then how do we jump that chasm, that sort of gap in the road? What are the alternatives? What are the options?
I think all of us are kind
Wow.
of already doing it. Oh, Graysky, you want to go, please?
No, I would just this conversation is right on point with a lot of things, and you've hit a lot of things that make sense. I mean, like within the reading, this whole thing about reiterating the process, which is something we all know that we've read before and everything else, and what Amazon has done, and it's been a proven system, and it works, and I agree, it's generating this chaos in order to get to a point where it's going to satisfy like a customer base. It's a good thing. But what I'm also seeing is that it's this, once the cat got out of the bag of how that process was very successful, even in the capital way, then you see companies and people started to do, copy the same type of, process as a way of growing. I'm not a big advocate of this endless growth type thing. I think there are limits. We shouldn't, want to get big, and then we start buying companies and things like that. That makes no sense to me. So we, at this point, we have to kind of, and it's funny because it does seem very overwhelming at times. You try to find your in, you try to find your niche. Of course, we want to be, like involved with the capitalist system. We do like to buy things. I understand that, but there is a cap. We have to, think of the the environment a lot more. We have to like include that in our decisions. We have to include people a lot more, which we all know. But the thing is that try to capture that chaos or get control of that. I think this is where the Web3 comes into place, is because now we have the tools to kind of like everyone have their own club, group, or community. And the ideal thing is that you can, like Stella said, is just be a part of other communities as you see fit. So it's kind of like that whole Lego theory, which is, like you build a, ecosystem, and then you connect with like-minded ecosystems, not, that you want to, and that's an accepted way to kind of go forward. So you don't have to capture or steal or buy a system, but you can also be a part of that system and interact with it as much as you want. You don't have to go all in, or you can just take a little bit of piece of it, but still that's the way it should be connected. So, like to Stratus' point, it's, and I feel you in a way that, where do you start? Where do you get in? Where do you how do we, gain, some type of traction of being a part of this whole, chaotic thing and understand it. But just focusing on your thing and then connecting with, other places, I think it's the way to go.
Go ahead.
I was saying, like what you said about constantly growing, and like the fact that like this constant growth regime thing that we have, and so many. There's this guy called Eric Weinstein. He's a interesting, very provocative figure, but sometimes has really really nice things to say, and he can package them really well. He called this exact thing that you're talking about embedded growth obligations, and his entire point was that. In fact, I can read one of his quotes. embedded growth obligations are the way in which the institutions that plan their future predicted on legacies of growth. Basically, these institutions, if they don't grow at a particular rate, they turn pathological. And the thing is, that growth rate is so impractical. You just can't keep doing that. For example, PhDs. Like, they're like 10 professors, their professors have like 10 PhD students. Every PhD student wants that professor job. And it makes sense as long as you're making new institutions, new universities, new. But the second you stop growing, which is like when you stop having new universities come up, this system is like a pyramid scheme. And it completely falls apart. Like, and there are many examples you can think of, including, I would say, the inflation rate of every single currency, which is like, even if it's like 4%, 5%, like if you compound that, you're like, that's a ridiculous and like growth you're expecting out of every single country every single year. And if you don't meet those limits, almost every institution kind of goes, because everyone's assuming that's what growth is going to come, and everyone's preparing for it. But when it doesn't happen, like everything goes crazy. And I think a lot of like the points he makes about many institutions he points out are like, oh wow, like none of this makes sense anymore. But the thing is, if we don't continue doing it, like these institutions have these growth obligations. If you don't continue meeting them, they all crumble. So we are all tied in this whole mess of like constantly growing at a particular rate, or else like yeah, things just fall apart.
Yeah, is it okay if I jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and Grayskull, I hear what you're saying. I think I apologize if my intent came off as I don't know where to start, or I'm just trying to understand. Actually, let me put a question out there to everybody, and I want this to be a honest answer, or hopefully you can be as transparent as you want it to be. Should we, like, the whole comment about different Web3, that Grayskull, what you were saying, different Web3 projects or different ecosystems and whatnot? Do we think that there is the ability for us to have one ecosystem that touches multiple different aspects of a virtual economy, or should we be tapping into individual economies or individual Web3 projects and their ecosystems? Yeah, jump in. This is like, just let's talk all of each other.
No, I still owe you also an answer for the last question. But yeah, let's get to this one first. I think it's more about right now, right? For me, Web3 looks like this. Bubble here, bubble there, sub-bubbles in both big bubbles, right? And then some bubbles here and some bubbles there and some bubbles here. So meaning it's all not very connected. Like there is some effort to connect, right? So for example, Gitcoin, right? Gitcoin, I think, is a really good example for like building an ecosystem. And this is also kind of like my role model I'm trying to go by, right? Because I think they've started to involve like partnerships, like a lot of like new projects are being born out of Gitcoin, right? But the problem is Gitcoin doesn't necessarily touch onto anything else, right? It touches on its like, let's say, its own like a product release, right? But it doesn't necessarily touch like suddenly to digital fashion or to metaverse applications or to like external DeFi applications, right? It touches within itself, yes, right?
What's the focus of it again?
Release.
Like, what would you say that focus is for Gitcoin? Their focus is.
Wait, what did you say?
Public funding. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, funding, exactly. But nonetheless, they've been also doing a lot to support different communities, right? Like even though it's funding, like for example, right, if you hand in for funding with, let's say, NounceDAO, or if you hand in for funding with Seed Club, right? It works, or a Web2 venture capitalist company, right? It still works very differently than with Gitcoin. So Gitcoin, you also have the Gitcoin passport, which kind of like gives you credentials, among different projects that have been involved. So it goes a little bit, I'm just saying, I think for like what's already out there, they're doing quite a good job, even though they're like an accelerator essentially, right? So, but still, it's not going far enough for me, because it's not interconnecting the different disciplines or different fields. Like Web3 is an umbrella term, housing a lot of different technologies and emerging businesses, right? Business categories, I even want to say. And it's not making do for that. And so I think this is where we need to look at, like, how can we interconnect? How can we, like Grayscale said, right? How can we build partnerships? Like, it's great all of us are involved in token engineering, right? But like, what can we do outside of token engineering, right? So for example, I mean, Rohan, I'm so sorry I'm dragging you out on this, but for example, Rohan has nothing to do with digital fashion, right? Or with design necessarily. Of course you appreciate design, I hope, but like, this is not where you stand as a professional, right? But still you got involved into, for example, helping out at the Alana community for AI, right? To train her as an AI. Like, there are bridges, and I think we should build more bridges. Or I discussed yesterday with a very different community, right? Hey, how about we do a graphic novel together with their, like, mascot for their project, which is a very different one from Alana, right? And we will be working on a graphic novel in the near future. I hope probably in the next 3 months. This is only being discussed. But the point is, like, how can we, with intent, right? How can we go out there and interconnect different projects? And then obviously, it's nice I'm saying all of this like very philosophically and, like, oh, let's be nice and chummy together, right? But at the same time, right, we need to think like, how do we keep track on that on chain, right? And how can we make sure people are being credited for their work? How can we make sure this evolves into like an interconnected economy as well, right? So this is the point that's so interesting for me, because right now, if you own DAI, sure, you're part of the DAI people, right? If you own Ethereum, you're part of the Ethereum people. And you can have different cryptocurrencies, but eventually a lot of them don't, other than, in liquidity pools, obviously, right? But they don't really touch, like, they don't really interconnect with each other. And I feel this is like, it's something we're missing out on. It's not that I know how to fix all of this, but this is the answer to your first question. I think the starting point is what all of us are doing, right? Just like keep pulling through, even though it seems daunting sometimes, like doing all the reading and not having this like super clear, the light bulb turns on moment, right? I just think we have to keep going, we have to make experiences, and we have to become less precious. So if we're not sure if a system works, right? Don't just throw it out at people and make them lose a lot of money, obviously, right? But make a version that is safe for people to test. Maybe it doesn't yet feature, real coins, right? Maybe just points, so you can test if it works, right? And if people are engaging with it. Instead of just being super precious, developing like the best product you can for the sake of, being the best developer in the world, because this is something I've seen a lot, right? A lot of developers, they're very precious and they build the most genius of systems, and then nobody wants to use them because people don't understand them. And it saddens me so much coming from design, and design is all about making stuff that people want to engage with, right? And so, being less precious and putting systems out there that might not do the real job yet, but they test the functionality, right? And let people test and engage. Okay, sorry. Too long again. Go.
No, it wasn't too long. She hit some really good points. The thing about bridges, for me, that's a major thing. We have to find out a way to, bridge everything together. I mean, like that is one of the most important things. And then, what you just said about mindset. I mean, bringing a design mindset to a technical, person will open up a lot of, things because it's like it's very important to have all these different disciplines come together, which is one of the benefits I think in this whole space. I mean, just one example, I never really, I mean, I used to follow Microsoft in the Web 2 field for a long time doing projects for them. But I never thought that they would get involved with, developing, well, of course they have a, like a whole cloud storage thing, which is actually past AWS and recently, and a lot of people using it. But they're also doing things like I didn't think they were going to be a part of, like having a, CO2, like admission to take, CO2 out of the environment, and of course, like via credits and things like that, which now maybe I want to link to them, maybe I want to have, bridge to them in some type of way. So, with all the reading we do, that's one thing like you said, we have to keep reading because there's so many different options, and keep track of that because it's really difficult to, gauge all these different bubbles or projects that people are doing and then find the bridges.
Yes, you're right. That is a difficulty, right? So something on top that we need is not just, the tool to actually link, but also to navigate and find the communities that make most sense for you to link with, right? Because this is like someone giving sponsorship, right, for the Alana magazine, and I'm like, yeah, but this is not your crowd. Like, I really appreciate, but this is not your crowd, right? Like, I would be lying to you, like, if I would accept this. It doesn't make sense, right? You can put a lot of money in stuff that actually doesn't make sense. So that would be actually also, it's a great thought. Like, this would be something we need, almost like a search engine for like-minded projects. And how can you like create a standard for that, similar to like proposal standards, right? Like, what are like the trigger points that you can use for matchmaking, essentially. That's good. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think those are excellent points. Thank you for providing your feedback. I think it's the one thing I know is that the path forward is not going to be easy. It's definitely going to be filled with a lot of trials and tribulations at various levels of so many different aspects of what we're trying to achieve. But needless to say, I think that conversations like this make it all the more less of a independent journey and more of finding your people and having these conversations. So I wanted to just say thank you for everything that everybody's shared. I think it's been really good. Gives me some things to reflect on, and I'm gonna probably read that book within a week. That Righteous Mind one. I'm gonna start with that one, and if there's any others, the articles I just saw, Stella, I saw yours. I'm gonna probably catch up on those too, and maybe for next time I'll refresh the reading for the proper chapter. What are we on right now? Like which what's the? Can you just maybe post the readings for next week or like what section it is, and I'll just consume it.
Yeah, I think next week we should, since no one really did like the reading they were supposed to do other than Rohan. These two, complexity theory and organization, right? Complexity aided governance, and we can start with DAO, because I think in DAO some of us have already read one or two of those articles. So yeah, maybe
Okay.
that. Yeah, sounds okay.
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, it says perfect. I have to drop, but thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, same.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah, we do. But I will, in fact, if y'all are struggling with those few, we can do like a regular session where like I take y'all through the articles together. Control, what is it? Control
That'd be
systems
awesome.
and complexity. Yeah.
I'd love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All
See you guys
right.
Well,
next
thank
week.
you very much,
Yeah, thank you
and
for
have a good
joining.
weekend.
You
Mhm.
too. Bye bye.
All right.
Next week, everybody better read.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.